So with all of that said in my introduction, I just want to say I'm so excited. It's been such a long time coming to get you on the show. It's always sweet for me when it's like such a long investment of time and energy and things happen and then we finally get to connect and do this. And so I always feel like it happens at the right time. And
Yeah, I'm
so
sorry.
thank you.
I got my new position and I was just crazy busy and multiple people were asking me for my bio and like update, I didn't update my bio. And then finally at some point I just was like, sorry, updated everything. And then I, one night just sent it out to everyone. I'm like, okay, here's my updated bio. It wasn't even that updated, but I did what I, because I felt bad making everyone wait.
Yeah, well, you've been in a big transition, and I definitely want to get to that with broken English. But I'd love to just take it back to the beginning a little bit. Where are you from, and how did you discover that producing was a thing a person could do as a career?
Um, when I was at Sony, I was interning there. And then
Yeah,
when you're in university or at college, whatever you're at, wherever you're at in your, I guess when you're going to school, you they don't tell you there's a development division. They don't tell you a department. They don't tell you they tell you how to make a film, but they don't tell you at a studio level these different places, these different departments, and how you fall into them. And then you're a producer at a studio, but you don't get producer credit.
right,
So
right.
you're in development, you do your production, and then you go to post and you watch it throughout the process. You do the casting, then you watch and then you finish the film, and you have a producer on while doing these things. But really, you're doing a lot of the work. But
Yeah,
you just
but not
producer
getting
with
the credit.
yeah. So I was like, oh, so once I saw budgets, and I was like, oh, the producers are that's where the money's at
Is
because
it? Maybe at the studio level, not the level I've been operating at. Trying to get on your level.
not independent like smaller films, but I think when you're at a studio, when you're producing studio films, the budgets are a lot bigger and there's a lot of a lot more money to be had. So
Yeah, yeah.
your
But
fees go
back it
up.
up. So you're from LA, right?
I'm from Orange County.
From Orange County. And so growing up in Orange County, did you have a sense as a teenager that there was this film industry, you know, 50 miles away, essentially, that you could get to and that you wanted to get in? Was that a clear sort of path for you?
No, 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 no. I think it was I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I was in community college. This is what's crazy. I was in community college taking classes and I got married young, had kids young, and I was like, I need to figure this out. And I was taking classes and I was going through the catalog and I was like, I always had an interest in film, but just not, I didn't know what that meant. And so I took like production classes, screenwriting classes, even a editing class. And, I was like, oh, wow, I think I could write. And so I started writing and got an internship at Sony while I was there in TV. And I was like, oh, I don't want to, I don't want to write. These writers are really good. And I'm not that good.
Yeah.
So I was like, I can develop though. I can give good notes and I can develop a script and I see things that are wrong with scripts. So once I knew that that division actually existed, I was like, this is where I want to be. This is exactly where I want to be.
And
And
how
it
did
just,
you find that out? Like, is it when you were at community college, did you learn that like, okay, there's such a thing as a development track that you can get on and here's the path
no,
to get there?
no, I just went online because I'm that kind of person. Like I just went online and was like, okay, I'm going to get an internship. Like we talked about internships, but I was like, I'm going to get an internship at a studio. So I started just applying to these random, like just blindly applying to, I would just read like the little blurb of like what it was. And I was like, okay, this seems like something I would want to do.
Yeah.
And I started applying and I just got so lucky that someone in TV, I got a couple, actually received a couple offers and I was like, wow, this is crazy. I wasn't expecting this. I did expect it. I was like, I'm going to get them all. But when they came in, I was
Yeah.
like, oh, okay, you're onto something. And there's a few and I ended up going with Sony TV. And when I went in, it was I was older than everyone else because I was married already for I don't know how many years at that point, 7 years maybe,
Wait, so
6
how
years.
old were you at that point?
Uh, I was 26.
And you
I was
were married for 7 years with two kids, three kids,
no two
two
kids, and
kids.
one of them was a newborn.
Wow.
So, and I've never told this to anyone actually. So during this time, I was going to school. My husband, he works in IT, and he had his job and his career going. And he was signed up for the reserves when he was like 18, 19 years old. He signed up for the reserves just because he was young, and it was like, I'm going to sign up for the reserves. After I had my son, he was a newborn, he gets activated to go to Iraq. My son was like 2 weeks old.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So I got my internship a little after that, and I was working full time as a police dispatcher, and I was going to school full time, and I was interning at Sony TV. So when people say, "Oh, I don't have time. I don't know how I can't do it," I'm like, bullshit. You could do it, because no one knows that whole side of that story. I've never told anyone that, but I had so much going on, and I think the more I had on my plate, the more I just got done. I had to do it.
How did you manage all of that and keep all those balls in the air?
Well, I based my work schedule. I was the what was my title? I was the supervisor of the dispatchers. So I was able to move my schedule however I wanted it, because I was overseeing them. So I didn't necessarily have to be there. I didn't have like a full like schedule. So, and my boss at that time, who overseeing the whole thing, he knew what I wanted. He knew that I had this goal, like, oh, I'm going to work at the studio. I'm going to be an intern. So he allowed me to really move my schedule, and he would fill in for me. He even helped me with my resume. He's like, no, you don't need to don't put your police dispatcher. Put that you're an admin something. Like, he changed my title. And so, like, when I went to Sony with this resume and I sent it out, I didn't say I was a police dispatcher. I said I worked for the naval, like a naval base or something. I fibbed a little, but it worked.
Yeah.
But I was able to work that schedule around my school schedule, and I worked both of those schedules around my internship.
So let me just get this straight. You
Yeah.
are working full time as a supervisor. You are in school full time. You have an internship part time, I'm assuming. And you have 2 children, 2 babies, one which is basically 2 weeks old. Your husband is in Iraq. How long were you living that life before you got a little reprieve? Like, how long were you in that period?
It was like for 2 years. And even then, it didn't seem like, I didn't seem overwhelmed. I was tired a lot, but I was like, I have to do this. I have to do this.
Wow, Jolene, that's like, I just feel embarrassed for myself. Like, for every time I've complained about how hard my struggle has been, you're a goddamn inspiration. That's insane.
When I was at community college doing this, I was in community college, by the way, when I got the internship. And Erica Coates, who was she's the one that gave me my internship at Sony TV. I just recently talked to her. She's a COO now of a company. She's badass. A Black woman gave me my first opportunity.
Love that.
And I remember, and maybe whoever her boss was at that time, had mentioned, like, it was a Black guy that she gave another internship, and myself. And I think he asked her, like, is this a diversity thing? Like, cause she, like, we're both, and they weren't used to probably seeing that. And she was like, no, I just think that they deserve this. And my resume, I'm at Golden West Community College, and he's like, there was like people who applied for this who were at USC and all the, Chapman, wherever they were at. And and I asked her, like, what happened? How did that happen? She's like, I just saw that you were older, like not older, but older than them. And she knew that I was in everything that I had, and show up and really learn. And at the end of it, she's like, Jolene, what do you want to do? Like, what's next for you? And I'm like, I want to work in films. And she's like, I want to work in features. And she's like, oh, I know someone over at Screen Gems, which is on the lot, same place. She called him, and she's like, I'm not giving you the internship, though. You have to go over there and apply. Like, you have to interview. You're not getting handed anything, which I loved. And I said, I got this. I went over there and got that internship, and then was still living this crazy life that no one really knew about. I would just show up because I had to, because I had no other choice. I wanted to show my children that, like, okay, I got married young, and I'm still married, by the way. And my kids are both great scholars, and because and hopefully driven like their mom, because they see me and they see their dad. But I had to do it. I had no other choice. And no one knew at work that any of this was happening. I just showed up and did what I had to do. And then at some point, the internship was over, and I just was like, they told me stop showing up. Pam Kunis was like, tell her, like, her internship's over. And I was like, well, my badge still works. So I'm gonna show up until it doesn't, I guess. And they end up giving me a job. I end up getting a job. And I'm for 10 years after that. So
yeah, I saw on your Insta, you had this blurb from some talk you did probably last year, because there were humans all gathering in the same room, where you were talking about how your internship ended and you just kept showing up, and then they were like, no, you're good, and you're like, I'm gonna still keep coming, and you just kept going. I love that. God, it speaks
Yeah.
so much to your hustle and your tenacity. It's so inspiring. I hope you recognize that, right? You know that you're like a badass.
No, I don't know about that, but
Yeah, come on.
I have a lot of cousins, and they like, I'm the oldest of like 40 cousins on my mom. My mom has 8 siblings, and there's I think like 40 cousins that are younger than me. And so I'm very, very close to them. We all live in Orange County. Maybe that's part of the reason why I don't want to leave. And they pretty much are like, they pump me up. But
Yeah. They keep you real, keep you grounded. That's good. That's good. Okay, so then you're at Sony for a decade, Screen Gems specifically. And so you started at the ground level there, and then you worked your way up to basically become, what's your fancy title here? Let me find out what it is here. You became, you were sort of heading development and production. You were an executive there. So tell me about
executive, I guess, at Screen Gems.
Yeah, tell me about that journey to 10 years at the same company. I feel like nowadays that's becoming increasingly rare because everybody bounces around so much. So what was that time like?
Well, once I got in, Clint Culpepper was the president, and I was interning there, and then received that a desk opened up in post production, and so they go ahead and do that. And I was like, well, I want to be here, and I'm showing up every day for free. During those times, you weren't getting paid, so I was showing up for 2 years or like 3 semesters, 4 semesters for free. I just was like, I have to do this. And they're like, well, post desk is opening up, and so I ended up quitting my other job. And Screen Gems is so small where you walk out one door and it's like a loft, and you go across the kitchen right there. There's offices. There's like 8 offices, and everyone knows nobody works together. That division is so small. So our development team, post team, and development, production, and post team, we're all right there within. We cross. We see each other every day. We work together. Our meetings are together. We work so close. So I was like, okay, I'm going to take this post job, and I'm going to get into development from this position. I thought it was going to be easy. I was like, oh, they're going to see, and but a little did I know, no one leaves their positions there. So I was stuck in post and I was not happy about it. But I learned what I could for like 3.5 years, and I was like, I'm wasting my career away. Like I should be. And I was doing like side things. I was still doing like telling people I work at Screen Gems and meeting with like creatives, like talent, writers, directors. They didn't know what my position was, and they didn't know what department I worked in. They just knew I worked at Screen Gems at Sony. And no one ever questioned that. Like, if I talk, I talk. They're going to just go with it.
Yeah.
So
that's the industry, right? People just go with it. It's kind of crazy.
It was awesome. And I built this nice little network of, contacts or whatever while working in post, but no one ever knew that. So at some point, a desk opened up like 3.5 years later, and quickly I slid in there. I was like, okay, guys, that's mine.
You're like,
and they're like, there was no interview or anything. All right, cool. Just like move your computer over there, and it's your job. It's like, it was like across the little hallway. And then I was there for a few years, and Clint was like really into he's like, I want to get into the Latino market. I want to do this, like tap into this. And I was like, yeah, we can do that. I know them all. And he's like, how? Like, I think he didn't realize all the work I was putting in post when I was pretending I was in development, but I wasn't. And so then I remember he was like, walking by my desk, like, does anyone know Patricia Riggin? And this is probably like 6 months into or maybe 8 months into my position there. And I'm like, I know Patricia Riggin. And he was like, looked at me like, and it's an open, there's desks everywhere. And it's just, there's no offices, only there, like executive offices. And I'm like, and he's like, you can call her. And I was like, yeah, I'll call her right now. He's like, oh, okay. Well, can you call her and tell her that we want to hire her for this job? And I was like, sure. So I go into someone's Pam Kuma's office, and I'm like, hey, talking to her. And she's like, well, what's the budget? Blah, blah, blah. I'm like going through the whole process. And then I'm like, all right, she's going to come in on Monday and have lunch with us. And I think at that moment, he realized, oh shit, like, okay.
You're legit. Yeah.
And then he took me under his wing, and he allowed me to really do what I wanted to do. And he trusted me, and he was like, okay, you work on this and cast this. And he started giving me definitely more opportunities for sure.
Do you think that had you not taken it upon yourself to spend those 2.5 years of your 3.5 years of your post time building your network as yourself as a future development exec, do you think he would have seen that potential in you so quickly and taken you under his wing so quickly?
No, because I would have had nothing to offer. If you have
Yeah.
nothing, then no one wants you,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know?
yeah. Interesting. So was that intentional? Were you like, did you see that, or were you just doing what you thought you needed to do at the time?
Oh, I was gonna like at that point, I was like, I'm gonna start my own company. I'm gonna go be a producer. I'm gonna go make movies. I was like a whole another level of stupidity because I was like young and like, I just saw things differently, and it wasn't reality. It wasn't realistic. Like I just didn't have the experience I needed, and yeah, I was building it up for other reasons. I was building up because I thought that I was gonna go start my own company, and so I needed those things regardless.
Okay, so then 10 years. And so then he takes you under his wing. You obviously get to learn a lot. What would you say are some of the biggest takeaways, like if you had to, sort of share like maybe the top 2 or 3 lessons that you took from your 10 years at Sony, what would it be?
Oh wow, deep question there.
Yeah.
The lessons. I don't know if they're necessarily lessons. What I gathered from there is just you really have to take it in your own hands. Like you can't sit and wait to be promoted. You can't sit and wait for things to be handed to you because it's just not that way. It's so competitive. Everyone's trying to like reach for that next position. Everyone wants their movie to be picked. Everyone wants, it's just very, very competitive. So, and you almost like, you're like, let's join as a team with your colleagues. And then you're like, well, it's not necessarily like, you don't feel like it's a team because you're constantly trying to get ahead. I mean, the challenge, I can tell you what the challenges were is that
Yeah.
there was, it was all males and they were all older white guys. And there's nothing wrong with that, except that what I wanted to do was different than what they wanted to do. So it didn't work out well for me. Like they didn't see what I saw in the Latino market specifically or Latino talent. Like they wanted it and they saw it, but no one wanted to be the first one to take that risk, I should say.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
So when I was given this opportunity here, instantly it was like the owner of my company, the reason why he brought me on was because of what I had, because of the people I knew, of because I saw what he saw. We had
When you say here, you mean broken English.
yeah,
Yeah,
we
yeah.
had the same goals, common goals, and as far as like creating great films for Latinos and not necessarily Latino films, just films with Latinos in them.
Mhm. Mhm.
And
Very important.
it's not really about our stories. Sure that we have our stories.
Ugh.
Because I come from a studio background, I always think commercial, like big money, not that there's anything wrong with prestige or art house films. My mind, because I come from there, it goes there. And so I'm like, oh, I want to make a romantic comedy, but it's not going to be about like these two Latinos who are in love. No, it's just these two people who are in love, and one of them happens to be Gina Rodriguez and like whoever. And
Exactly.
don't ever talk about them like they're who they are, like their background. You just see it
Yeah,
as it's
it's not about that. It's just another dimension to the culture. That person happens to be of this culture and have this lens on the world. I think that's it. I agree. Like I'm sort of burnt out. I think everybody is, especially in the Latino community. Like we've all seen your immigrant story. We've all seen the movie about like what it's like to come to America for the first time, what it's like to adjust to America in the first time, like what it's like to be first generation. Like we've seen these stories and they're very important, but it's like such a plethora of them. And there's no contrast to that of like, what is it like to just be a person falling in love who also happens to be of a certain demographic or a certain ethnicity or a certain race? Like, I think we are slowly getting to that place where that will, there's a little fly on my face, will eventually become the new normal, a reflection of what our world looks like, what America looks like, and the tapestry of all kinds of people and perspectives and cultures. So that's amazing. But I want to back up to, because being at Sony for 10 years and obviously having to deal with the frustrations that you dealt with having these white men who, to your point, like nothing wrong with that, but there's a big disparity between perspective because they're looking at projects from their lens, right? Their worldview, and you have your worldview. So I imagine that you had periods of intense frustration with being the only woman, it sounds like, and the Latina sort of token in that sense, being like, hey guys, we got to think about this. Hey guys, like we got to do this. And they're like, no, not yet. No, we don't want to be the person. How did you in yourself, like privately, I guess, navigate that to still show up every day and put your best foot forward and not let that consume you?
It was extremely, extremely frustrating, especially because I drove from Orange County every day to
Incredible.
LA. And I, like I said from the beginning, I did it for 2 years for free, and now I'm getting paid. And I thought, well, you're going to pay me to drive to work? I'll do it. I was so excited. And Sony was the best to me. And I would never take that away from Sony they gave me everything I needed to get where I'm at now. But how did I deal with the frustration? I continue to do what I did. I built my lovely, network and long list of contacts and started creating outside, because at that point I wasn't like, I didn't care if I got fired. I don't know if I didn't care if I got fired, but I was like, I'm just going to show you guys that there's value in this, and I'm going to go create it myself on the side when I have time. And if you find out about it, either one, you're going to be like, you're fucking brilliant, or two, you're fired. No. It was a risk we're taking though.
Yeah.
A friend of mine, she was like, oh, we have this project and it had a big star who happened to be her sister, money. And she's never asked me for anything. She barely even submitted anything to me. At some point I was like, you're my producer friend, but you never give me any project. Is it just like, we just like to drink wine together? Like, what's happening?
Yeah.
And so, which made this decision even easier when she came to me and said, we need to raise some money for this project. And I was like, let me read it. I read it. It was probably one of the best scripts I've read in my life.
Wow.
I was like, I want to do this. I gave it to them, and Zoe Saldana's a lead. It's a fucking no-brainer.
Yeah.
And it's a small budget, not small, but small enough
for a studio comparatively. Yeah.
It was like,
yeah.
It wasn't 20 million. And I was all excited. I'm like, we're going to do this. Fuck yeah. I was so, this isn't like, we got handed something like beautiful on a platter. Like, this isn't unreal. And I went, and they're like, yeah, I just like, I don't remember exactly what it was, but he was just like, I just don't get it. Or it's just not for us, that's like the easiest answer to give. And I'm like, well, why? Well, it's just not. Okay, cool. And then I realized they didn't even finish reading the script. They read halfway through it because the answer he gave was telling. I'll say that.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, you know what? I closed my door and I called her and I said, I know someone who has money and I'm going to call him. I've never asked him for anything. And he's always, for 10 years, since I was an intern, he wanted to finance my film. The first one I wrote, that was a piece of shit. Thank God that didn't happen. And
I think this is when we met, because when we had lunch, you were making moves. You were making these moves.
I was over it, huh?
Yeah.
And I called him and I said, I never asked you for anything. This is an amazing opportunity. I'm going to send it to you. Like that day, at the end of the day, he was like, let's have lunch. I think it was like the next day. And so the director, producers, we had lunch at Sony, and he came down from San Diego, and he was like, after our meeting, we walked they like separated smartly, and we're like, go talk to him. Went back to my office, and he was like, fucking let's do it. Let's figure it out. Like, I'm in. And it was that easy. And I was like, how is that possible? Like, everything is a struggle here. It takes so much time to get any like answer. Even an answer is like difficult. I'm not even asking for money, just like a yes or no. And then that was like the turning. And I tell them all the time, like, I'm so thankful for like that, for them even coming to me, even though they were asking me for something. I got so much out of it. I got like this drive and this like, I can do anything. And then at that point I was on. It was like, I'm out of here. Like, at some point someone will realize what I have, and they'll come get me.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's funny that it seems to me that your drive and your hustle and you lean into these risks. You're a big, bold risk taker. You just you seem to live life like just chest open. You just throw yourself in the ring and you're just kind of down. You know what I mean? At least that's the impression that I have from our limited experience. And it's such an important skill set, especially for a woman, I think, to kind of be bold like that. Where does that come from for you? Have you always been this way, or did you throughout the years find a way to tap into that more?
I probably was a risk taker in bad ways when I was younger. And I turned it into like positives.
You just channeled it to some better stuff.
Yeah. I think I've always been a little out there and like big dreamer. Like, even before I got into film or like into Sony, I was like, I need to do something. Like, I'm like, my mindset is entrepreneurial all the time. Or before this, I was like, I'm going to open a restaurant. I would go home and I have a twin sister, and I would tell her like, and she was the opposite of me. She was like, kind of like, was like, I just want to be a stay-at-home mom, and was so content being that. And I was like, why don't you want to like do anything? You know, like it was like, it makes me like, it almost like, no, it upsets me when people like settle. I'm like, why would you want to like work at the grocery store? There's nothing wrong with working at the grocery store, but why would you want to settle into that? Like, how, like I could never just say, okay, this is what I'm going to, I got stuck here at a young age. Like I started working when I was 16, and somehow this became my life, because it happens all the time. You get a job, you get money, and you're like, well, I have kids and I have a mortgage, and I can't take that. I can't do that, because then it would disrupt my regular, like, you know, I need money, and I get that, but I just might like, what is it that you want to do? I ask my cousins all the time, because some of them aren't as driven as I would like them to be. And I'm like, what do you know? What is it what's going to make you happy? Because I couldn't imagine going and working at the bank every day, like walking in and doing, and maybe they are happy. Now, maybe I'm just more like, I want big. I want, you know, I don't know. But I think I've always been like wanting bigger things or more, and like getting like opening a restaurant. I have no business opening a restaurant. Why would I want to open a restaurant? But I was like, well, it seemed like I would run my own business, and it seemed fun, and it like made sense at that moment. But I would come home with all these ideas. Like it was never like, oh, I'm going to go work a 9 to 5. It was never a job. So yeah, I don't know.
I think there's something to it that either you look at life through a lens of possibility, right? Where like anything is literally possible. Like, why not? Like others have figured it out. Others have found a way. If it's a human desire, there's a human solution. If it's a human made problem, there's a human made solution for it. So why not try? Like you have the one life, as far as we know. It's one precious life. You only get to be here once. So why not go for it? Go for these things. And I've seems like there are people who are driven by the possibilities of anything can happen, and others who are paralyzed by the possibility that anything could happen. It's like that perspective, that mentality of you want to sabotage yourself. Like you have these dreams, you have these desires, but it feels so far away that staying here, to your example, like working in a bank, having your parameters, having something that feels easy, controlled. You don't have to like try to shake the foundation of the very thing that you do. I think it works for a lot of people, and it you know, I'm not wired that way. I'm like you. I'm cut from your cloth, where I'm like out there and kind of crazy, and you know, ventured and out here and left home when I was young to come pursue my dreams and stuff. And I just refuse to believe that it's not possible for me, for anybody else. Like it's just, it never occurs to me, you know? It's like it never occurs to me that it's impossible. It's like I'll keep trying until I die. That's just kind of how it is. And it's interesting. I wish I could bottle up whatever that thing is and sell it. Oh my God, I become a millionaire, billionaire, you know?
Yeah.
Like put it in a little pill, like the thing that wakes you up and gives you drive for life, a hunger for possibility. So
I mean,
yeah.
it was always like that though. You know, there's days where you're just like, I want the least amount of responsibility. I'm over this. I'm trying to change this whole industry and like show them what they're missing out on, these opportunities. And then it became this isn't even like, at some point I'm like, this is just overwhelming me. Like it's too
Right.
much.
But then here's the point, but you keep coming back. You have those thoughts, you have those feelings. I have that too, especially as a freelance producer. How many times am I like, does this even matter? What am I doing with my life? I'm putting all this time and energy and sweat equity into projects with the hope and the dream that this actually goes into production, that this actually makes money. In the meantime, I'm working on spec, you know, there's no income with all the stuff I'm doing. And you go, I don't have a 401k. What am I going to do about retirement? I want a family one day. Like all of these big life things weigh on you. So I too feel that. And some days I'm like, fuck it, burn it all to the ground. I'm going to move to an island. I'll figure it out. I'll open up a coffee shop. But knowing me, within 6 months, I'd be heading the tourism board there and like, you know, ramping shit up because I can't sit still, which is good and bad. But I think those days are super important because they sort of recalibrate you, it seems, because I too can just like have fantasized many times about leaving and what else could I do with my life and helping the world in a more tangible way. But we keep coming back, you know, and that's the part that I'm fascinated by, because of course you're going to have down days. Of course you're going to have these extremes where you're like, fuck this shit. Like I hate everybody. Everybody's an idiot. This will never change. There's no hope, you know? But again, you keep coming back. So to my point, like, why do you think that is? What is that for you that pulls you back in?
I don't even know. It's just like, I love it. don't know. It doesn't even feel like work. It just makes me happy, I guess. And I don't, I, like some people that have this like great answer. I don't have a great answer. I'm sorry, but it's
That's a
just
great answer.
happy. It just makes me happy. Some people wake up in the morning and like, I don't want to go to work or I don't want to do whatever it is that they have to do. I never wake up feeling that way. I wake up early and I like drink my coffee and I'm excited to be doing what I do and extremely grateful because I know a lot of people who aren't excited to wake up and do what they have to do. So for me, I just take that in and I always try to remember and every day to choose happiness it's not hard for me to choose happiness because I'm doing what I love. I have a great family, healthy, like I'm grateful.
Yeah. I think gratitude is important. And on that note, how do you practice self-care? What is self-care for Jolene look like?
Oh, well, before this whole COVID thing, self-care was like I would go get facial massages the whole time. My thing. I was like, all right, I'm leaving. I'm going and I had the same girl for years. Brooklyn's my spot. Like I just love it. That was my way of taking care of like that was my getaway. I should do more like meditation and stuff, but like that was relaxing to me and it was a reset. I like to go on Sundays because then I would start my work week real strong. Yeah.
Yeah. And now that we're in this interesting time,
Well, I try to exercise more for many reasons, but yeah, that's not necessarily like it's more like uh, what is it? Like mental self-care, you know? So that's where I'm at right now.
yeah, I mean, mental game has to be strong because like it's a career, an industry built on stamina, it's like people use the metaphor of a marathon often. But recently someone else brought this idea that it's like a dance, which I like a lot better because when you're dancing, there's different types of dancings and different speeds and tempos. And it's
Mhm.
like sometimes you're in that mood and you're gonna hip hop all over the place. And sometimes you're just like chilling, you're just like swaying. And that's all you can give it. But you're always taking two steps, you know what I mean? You're always kind of moving slowly forward. Whereas I think a marathon can sometimes mean you're so laser focused you kind of forget to look around and enjoy the journey. But because
Oh, yeah.
it yeah, sometimes you just gotta like salsa it up. But but because it is such a dance and it's such a long dance, I think a lot of people I've had on the show, it's like 10, 15, 20 years to get a career to the place where I guess outsiders may look at what they've accomplished and go, wow, you've made it, right? And then everybody on the inside is like, what do you mean? I'm just getting started. I don't feel like I've arrived at
Sure,
all, you know?
sure. I'm just getting started. That's how I feel.
Yeah,
But
exactly. It just takes yeah, it takes so long. So that mental game thing is very important. Gratitude is like everything. I think you nailed that. So I'm glad you brought that up. And speaking of gratitude, now you are in this new position. You're president over at Broken English Productions. Um, Tell us a little more about how that transition's gone, and now that you've been there since June, right? I believe we're in October, Uh,
July.
July. Okay, so it's been a few months, and so how is it going?
Back real quick, I just remember my friend telling me she's an actress and she says, Jolene, the highs are high and the lows are low. If you can like figure those things out when the lows are low and you just remember that you're gonna get back up and also understand that those super highs that you get you're gonna come back down and you just have to be able to, balance those things out. A good part of this business, or that's a good thing to know about this business is people get in these lows and they're really hard to get out of because things aren't going their way or not as quick as they would like them to happen. And then when they get that high, they're like, I need like and that's what keeps you going though. I think that's part of it is like when you're on top of your game and you're like everything's going your way, you want more. It's almost it's addicting a little bit. So maybe that's part of like why I keep coming back. Maybe that's other than making me happy, but man, those lows suck. So
Yeah.
hey,
Well, and so then I guess to the point, like we on the show, so much of the MO of my show is talking about the messy parts of the journey, right? The caca of our lives. So when you have been in these lulls, how do you get out of them? Like, what do you do when you're in that low to then come back to middle before the next high?
oh, I continue to try to create to get back to where I was, but it's gonna be an up and down the whole time. Mm, just like tell myself that though. Also, part of it was just like you're gonna get out of this, and I have a great like supportive like my girl tribe. They're amazing, and most of them are in the industry, so they get it. So I'll call them like, "What the fuck?" And they do the same thing to me. And they're like, you just have to find that balance. You have to be like, okay, also like, don't become so addictive to that, because it's not always going to be that way. But just talk myself out of it, out of that. Like, everything's gonna be good. You got this. And my daughter too. She's like, Mama, you have to enjoy your moments. Like, I remember I was sitting at my kitchen table once, and she was like, she told me like, do you ever just think and like how far you've come, and just be like, this is amazing? And I'm like, no, because she sees me. I'm constantly going on to the next thing, on to the next thing. And she's like, you should really just be thankful like for all the things that you have now. Like, you've come so far.
How old is
And
your
she
daughter?
like in 7th grade at the time.
Oh my
Like,
God.
she was in 7th grade. Now she graduated, but this was like 5 years ago. And I remember looking at her, and I drove to work, and I almost like was like emotional about it. I'm like, how is this little child telling me? Like, and it's true though. She was telling the truth. Like just be like, you come so far, and you're constantly like, I'm so hard on myself. And that's one of the things I need to work on, is because I'm like, things are, and I think I'm doing pretty good right now, but who knows, those things change. Can't you're in this industry, your job, your title, your whatever you're working on becomes your identity. And that's the worst thing that could ever happen, because you lose your job, you're fucked. So I always try to remember, like, I have this great family, and this, I'm healthy and I'm good. And I'm Jolene, and I outside on the weekend. That's part of the reason why I like to be in Orange County, is I separate myself from that. Like, they call it the orange curtain. You come to Orange County, it's orange curtain. And I'm no longer like having to discuss business on the weekends or running into people at restaurants. I'm now like mom mode. And even though I'm constantly working, but my son has baseball, or my husband wants, let's go to dinner. Like, I'm no longer in that place. So there's a separate, and that can never be my identity, because that's just not who I am.
Yeah. So you don't feel like then throughout your journey, you ran into that danger zone of like the career, the title, the position defining you and your self-worth?
Sure, probably when I was young, like in the beginning, I was like, I work at Sony, this is so cool. Like, and I, probably walking around telling everyone because I probably didn't expect, not that I didn't expect it to happen, because I think in the back of my mind, I was always like, I'm going to be something great, whatever that was, I don't know. Um, but then when I got the Sony job, I'm like, it's a Sony, like, it's a studio, like, holy shit, like, people like, so I'm sure at that moment, there's moments I'm sure that come in and out, and I'm like, and now my husband, when we go places or we meet people, and like, oh, what do you do for a living? I'm like, oh, I work for like a mini studio production company. And he's like, she doesn't work for it. She's the president of the company. And I'm like, I don't want that to be the identity. Like, I don't want, I just let it be.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think that's so smart and true, and definitely advice I wish I had been given early on, which is part of why like I do this show. I wish that I could have listened to these conversations when I was 25 and like stuck in that, because have put so much pressure on myself to reach my goals and make my dreams happen, because it's like I immigrated to America and my parents gave up everything. Like, all of that narrative is very strong for me. And so I definitely struggled with, especially as a freelancer, right? Where it's like you finish a job and maybe you go through some period of unemployment and waiting for the next thing. And it's very easy to get into those lulls of like, am I ever going to work again? Is anybody ever going to hire me again? Like, it's really easy to spin out. And
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't until I made the switch and started being more of a lead producer on some projects that I started being able to have some distance from that. But I wouldn't say it's like done deal and I'm not even impacted by it, because it's like every time you're leveling up, there's a new, it's almost like the whatever your triggers are in your life, they will always be there. But the more you're like climbing up to the top, it's like you've mastered one way to not be impacted by this trigger. Well, someone else has a new way to remind you of that trigger. And you're like, oh, I thought I got over this. Okay, cool. All right, now I got to learn to attack it from this angle. And so it's like you're always being presented with the same problem internally. Like, I think that we all come into this life with a certain set of challenges that we're here to overcome. And it's our karma to like figure out how to do that. And every time you think you've like mastered it, there's like something else that's going to be like, no, let me bring this to your attention once again, and it makes it, for an interesting life, that's for sure. But yeah, I think I definitely have struggled with that. So it's so interesting to hear the perspective of someone who came up in such a different way from me talk about some of the similarities, because I know I can look very ignorantly, not so much so now, but back then I would look to someone like you who was at Sony or had this fancy title or was sort of anointed by the industry in a way and go, wow, like they have it all figured out. And like, they're this person with this title and I'm just this girl trying to, I'm just this person with free, like I'm just doing this thing that comparatively felt small. And so then I felt like I must be small too, it's crazy, but you can very easily believe that narrative. And it takes a lot of mental stamina and willpower to really be like, no. And I think it was when I started getting on, sort of starting working on bigger studio projects, not studio level, your level, but, independents that were bigger projects, that I started to realize I would talk to executives and be like, oh, you don't know shit. Like you don't know stuff. Like I assumed you would because you're at this level. Wow. Like I had it all backwards, So I just started to realize that everybody's just doing their best, trying to figure it out. There's just, everybody's got an email and a fancy signature. But at the end of the day, you strip all of that. We're all just humans trying to navigate this business, which is very challenging, but extremely rewarding. And at the end of the day, extremely, I think, attractive for a lot of people because it's the ultimate act of community service. The stories we choose to tell make their way internationally and they impact people. They change perspectives. And it's why, in light of Black Lives Matter, in light of everything that's been happening with the Latinx movement, it's so important, to your point earlier, to tell stories that zoom out from the experiences that we've all seen time and time again, because there's so many more interesting stories to tell, and that for me, that like possibility, to use that word again, is personally what makes me like show up every day and have my fire and my hunger and go, we got to keep it moving. People are going to try to knock you down, but it's just, they're stuck in an old system, you know what I mean? And you just have to find that wind that fills your sails to keep moving forward, however slowly, but forward always, So I just monologued for a long time there, but yeah. Sorry. Sometimes I get on these soapboxes. I feel like I should be a motivational speaker.
Your viewers will appreciate that. I'll have to write check. That was therapy right there.
I know, dude. I mean, that's the thing. The podcast, selfishly for me and a lot of the producers who come on, has become like therapy because I have these conversations off mic all the time, usually with a lot of wine involved, and they're awesome. And I didn't realize others weren't necessarily having them as frequently. So it's my duty and my honor to share. But refocusing back on you. So now you're president of Broken English. You've been there since July. How is it going? Like, what are you most excited about for this new chapter of your career that you're in?
Sorry, I'm in the corner of my kitchen. We remodeled and I don't have any chairs. We threw everything away.
It's so good. If it's your domestic Orange County mom vibes, it's perfect. Very on brand.
All right. It's going amazing.
Yeah.
Like I said from the beginning, extremely, extremely grateful. I'm not sure, like I question it all the time, but I'm like, stop questioning it. You deserve this. Sometimes we get in those in that thought process of like, why me? How? And then I'm like, no, I fucking drove to LA every day for 10 years and 2 of them were for free. Like, you earn this. It's amazing. I have an amazing team, and the owner of the company, he has founder. He's a Latino. He gets it. He's a down-to-earth guy. He's not just some like rich dude, because that would be uncomfortable. He's like a normal rich guy. Which is fun because he like speaks like me and you and doesn't like, he's just a funny guy. He's given me all the power in the world that I need to do what I need to do. And what more can I ask for? I'm extremely, extremely happy and grateful. And he already has a director attached. He's like, what is it? And I'm explaining it to him. He's like, let's do it. And I'm like, this is like my 3rd day. And I'm like, okay, sure. Like, okay. In my head, I'm like, there's a process. Like, I'm come from a corporate world. We're gonna have to like do comps and like some P&L sheet or something. And he's like, go. I'm like, oh, like go buy it like right now. And he's like, yeah, I'll call you later. Hangs up, and I'm like, I sat there at my kitchen table. I was like, what the fuck just happened? and one of the girls, she's a producer and actress in it. She was like, I called her and I'm like, let's FaceTime. And we're talking. And she's like, and the same exact thing. I think she was like, cool. Like, all right, let's do this. I'm like, no, no, fool, we're doing this. Like, we're doing it. Like, we're gonna, like, I'm gonna call your lawyer right now. She's like, oh, fuck. All right. Yeah, for real. She's like, oh, okay. She's like, call my agent. Like, let's do this. And I think we both have, because we come from the corporate side, like she works on big films at studios and I come from the world from the opposite, you know? And so our timeline is different than the owner's timeline. He's like, just go do it. Like, we don't have to think about this, which he's like, in his head, it's like, this is the perfect cast. It's a comedy. It's fun. It makes sense. Like, why wouldn't we do this? Like, and which I like, because when you're at a studio, that everything, all these, like, there's number crunching and this and that and like comps, and we don't have any comps. We've never made any movies. Like, what is our comp?
Yeah.
Our comp is your comedy. Our comp is your Bridesmaids, but it's not, because we're Latinos in it, and so like it's not a comp, I guess, to them.
Yeah. And that's
Like,
dumb.
yeah, they're like, but understand, we need to make our stars global stars. We're domestic. Like, Gina is a domestic. She has some stuff outside, but she's a domestic star, which I get. So when they're putting her in as a lead in a movie, how are we going to get that international audience to come when no one knows who she is, possibly? I mean, I don't know how true that is, but that's come from
I don't think that's true. If you're talking about Gina Rodriguez, especially not after the Netflix feature she did.
Oh, no, I think before this, but
it was before this.
I think she's a huge star. Hence why I want to work with her so bad, and why I am going to work with her.
I know people in Brazil who are obsessed with Jane the Virgin and are like obsessed with her. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, but we're dealing with me and you know this.
We know this, but yeah.
I'm constantly like in the room saying, no, that's not how it is. No, like, everyone I know loves this, and this isn't for you and your kids. This is for me and my kids.
Mm-hmm.
And really more like me who want to. So I would always get, like, I would get their side, like, okay, is it? And because it's always a money thing in the studio.
Of course.
So it's like, it's not for us. It's like, we're creating art right now with my boss and my team. We're just like, oh my God, we're making movies for us. We're not thinking necessarily about money. We're just like, we're going to create this and it'll be amazing. Where on the other side, it's like, this is a business decision. It's always a business decision on both sides, but more so on their side. And so for us to be able to do this with him and him to say, yeah, go do that. And for both of us to be like, what the fuck? Like, this is crazy. Because it happened so fast. I was like, oh my God. Where else am I going to go to get that? Nowhere.
That's incredible. So what's your dream? What's your hope? Like, if we were to do this podcast 10 years from now and revisit what you hope to happen in this next decade, what would that look like?
Oh, it would be like the Latino empire, but not Latino because it's for everyone. It's this global empire for Latinos. You come to me when you want to make your movie, you're a Latino, like kind of like Will Packer and James Lopez at Will Packer Productions. When you want to make a big fun comedy or even a heartfelt comedy, whatever it may be, heart and humor is always a good balance. You come to me, like their community goes to them. That would be it. And I think I'm building it right now as we speak. And I it's time and time again, like we get on these panels, all of us do. And we say we want to, and I did it too. I want to do these things, and I want to do, like, I want to make these movies, and I want to help these people. I want to create these stars, but it's not that easy. And I understand that because you're dealing with big studios. But now where I'm at, I'm actually able to do that, which is amazing. So cool.
I'm so happy for you. You're like glowing. It's such a treat to get to share virtual space with you and get to feel a little bit of your fire for life and for this business. We need it. You know, I think especially given how this year has been for a lot of people with production being halted, I think it's put a lot of things in question for a lot of people with what is their why for this business, for this work that we do, that we all love and cherish so much. I think it's that this great pause that we're living in has definitely brought up these questions for a lot of people. And it's nice to see you in this space, you know, in such a challenging year and still being like kicking ass and doing your thing. I'm curious, you know, with how the pandemic has shifted stuff for a lot of people. Right now we get to Zoom meetings and we're inside an executive's home. We're inside like someone's private space, which previous to this moment in time, that was never the thing. And I wonder, you know, it feels like it's humanized people a little more, and it's made us, I would say, more compassionate towards our fellow man. Getting to see, like, if we're trying to have a meeting and someone's kid or dog is going to run through, you just have to deal with that. You have to roll with those punches, whereas you would never have to deal with that in an office setting. So I'm curious, with the way the pandemic is, we're still in it, but how do you think that's going to reshape and maybe redefine the way that we do things in our industry?
Mm, I think for the corporate world, it's going to be difficult because they're like us. We just made a movie over the summer, making movies over the summer because they're going to get sued or they're afraid there's other guidelines that they have to follow. So I think the independent world, everyone was taking advantage. I think I know we did. They're taking advantage of that off time the studio had, and they're like, "Here we go." I don't know. We're making a movie in 6 weeks, so it's holding us back. But you do have to be more careful. You do have to follow. You have a COVID line in your budget now, which is fucking crazy.
Yeah, it's a
Um,
lot of money.
yeah, you. It's going to be challenging, definitely, because you don't want to get anyone sick, or you don't want to be responsible for people getting sick. So it's going to be that side of it is the challenging part. Making movies is the easy part.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, yeah.
going to change it. I don't know. I think there's going to be a shitload of films on streamers next year. I guess is what happen because what happens to the theaters? I think they'll open. I mean, they're slowly opening back up, but I don't know. I don't. We'll see. I don't have an answer.
Do you think that it's changing people internally though, like in their perspectives of how they deal with each other? Do you think it's making people a little bit more, I guess, yeah, compassionate or tolerant of things, whereas maybe before they wouldn't be? Like, do you feel like there's a shift like that energetically, not just with the corporate physical aspect of making movies, but the individuals themselves?
I don't know. I think everyone's going through the same thing. It's slowly opening up, but during those times, I felt like a lot of people were dealing with. Even myself, I was like, "Am I losing it? Like, I need to go for a run. Like, what is happening? I'm locked in the house and I can't go anywhere. I'm not used to this." I think everyone was dealing with the same thing. There was more conversations about probably like mental health and like those things. And am I going through it? Am I losing it? Or yeah, I think definitely in that area, people are compassionate about it, about being nicer to each other. But I think there's people are going to be competitive regardless, and they're going to be who they are.
Well, we need that competitiveness. That's what makes the business, a sort of exciting game in a way. Like you got to have everybody showing up with their A game to keep everybody else in line. Otherwise, I think we would not be doing the work at the level that we're doing. So I think that's important. But yeah, that makes sense to me. Well, we are at the almost at the hour, so I have one final question for you. And of course, if there's anything else that you want to add or share, we'll take it. But just people always ask the advice question, and I personally kind of hate that question because it's just like for every one advice, there's someone else who says the opposite because everybody's journey is so different. So instead of that, I'd love for you to share with the listeners like a nugget of something you hope they take away from this conversation, from your experience so far. Just, yeah, based on where you are today, and how far you've come since those days, those days where you were doing so much, juggling so much, and you still are, but my God, like I had no idea about that part of your story, and it's just really inspiring.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, I think you have to have a certain DNA to have like to be in this business and to have the drive that you have, like you and I have. Um, you can't be passive. You just have to go after what you want. No one's going to hand you anything, um, except if you're like your dad's the president or the chairman or whatever. Then you get handed stuff, which I feel like half the industry is, and it pisses me off. But that's not my problem because I'm doing it on my own. Um, uh, I don't know. I would just say, don't be afraid to cold call people and email because that's how I built this lovely like network of people, and that's the only reason I'm here at Broken English probably is because like I wasn't afraid to do those things. And but also don't be annoying and like text me 10 times a day and ask if you got my email. Like, did you get my email? And I'm like, come on, guy.
It's a fine line. Oh,
Yeah,
it's an art. It's an art,
it truly
actually.
is. But
Yeah.
also have something to offer because everyone's like, oh, it's so easy for you to say like you work at Sony, and I'm like, yeah, but I use that. Like I know a lot of people that work at Sony that aren't in the position I'm in because I use that Sony email like no other. I was like, that Sony email was my best friend. Like,
Yeah.
so you have to. What do you have that I need? I guess is like if you come up to me and you have this brilliant script and I know someone's looking for this. Like, what do you have that I need? Like, figure out what that is, and know how to communicate with people. Listen more than you speak, especially with like actors and artists like that. They want to talk about themselves more than they want to hear you talk, for sure. So like, know those questions to ask. And I don't know if you're ever gonna be able to steal with talent or whatever it may be, but if you ever happen to have that opportunity and you want to work with them, let them talk. And that's amazing. That's amazing. But I say build that network, and there's writers. I will say this: there are writers at universities, and have these professors who are a bunch of assholes, and they're like, tell them they're never going to make it or whatever. And I think if you have an amazing script, I can write an amazing script, but if I don't have anyone to give it to, it means absolutely nothing, right? So build that network. That's my gift today. Build that network however you can. Reach out to executives, even if it's uncomfortable. Reach out to me. Reach out to whoever, like, don't be afraid, because no idea. Like, I feel like I have the most amazing writer, actually. He's my go-to. I met him through Twitter. Actually, he's like my guy. His wife, amazing. He has kids. He's a teacher, but he's a fucking fantastic writer through Twitter. But he had something to offer. He knew how to speak. One, he knew how to communicate with me, and he's like, I have this script, I have this idea, and I was like, wow, that's pretty good. Let me read your script. And I found out he could write, but also not everyone reads in this industry. It's like fake read. I happen to actually read, but I think if you have something to offer, people will listen to you. It's some mumbo jumbo bullshit, and I'll read through that, and I'll just be like, come on, you're wasting my time, and other people have it. There's some other people I could be talking to who really, really want this. So build your network, guys. That's all I got.
That's all you got. It's awesome. Well, look, you're amazing. I'm so happy for you and honored to be connected and to know you, and obviously hope we will work together one day and even deepen that connection more. But in the meantime, it is such a treat. I'm so grateful, honestly, to find an hour of your time. I know you're so busy, to share it with me and the listeners and get to capture this moment that you're in. It's such a treat. So thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Yay.
This is good. This is good.